Buddy, bring me some water.
How about please?
Don't be a useless fellow. You know the power of my knockout punch.
Jimmy, take this as a warning. You better run, or else...
Or else what?
Jinta ta chita chita jinta ta ta.
Is something supposed to happen now?
Jinta.
Jinta ta chita chita jum jum maya. Jinta ta chita chita jum jum maya.
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage.
And I'm Dennis, the Bodymeister.
I think it's no big secret that we are very much into the movies of S.S. Rajamouli. It's because of his movies that our exploration of Indian cinema really took off.
It's only a few more days till his new movie, RRR, is finally going to be released, so we thought this would be the perfect opportunity to review another one of his films.
We went backwards through his filmography and already reviewed both Bahubali movies, Iga, Maryada Ramana, Magadira and Yamadonga.
So the next one on our list was the 2006 musical action comedy Vikramarkudu, starring Ravi Teja, Anushka Shetty, Vineet Kumar and Ajay. The music was once again composed by his regular collaborator and cousin M.M. Keeravani, and the story is pretty much what you expect from a Rajamouli movie.
Which doesn't make it easy to break it down in just a few sentences, but I'll try. Essentially, the movie tells the story of the thief Attili Zati Babu and the cop Vikram Rathod. The two look identical, which disrupts Attili's plans to marry Neha, but helps Vikram's and his colleagues' plans to finally crush the villain Bavuji and his goons.
Excellent summary. We don't want to tell people too much because, as with every Rajamouli movie, Vikramarkudu is a surprise bag.
We are fairly experienced with his style of filmmaking by now, and I felt quite at home with this movie. From certain story elements, the overall structure, the creativity and goofy nonsense, to the epic nature and over-the-topness of it all. Like his other films, this can be quite exhausting and overwhelming too. His movies can feel like live-action cartoons, in which everything is possible and you never quite know what might happen next.
You just have to accept a lot of things and don't question logic too much. Vikramarkudu is a big commercial masala entertainer and as such it delivers.
Yes, it's fun, it's bonkers, it has some nice action, it has a beautiful and fierce heroine and an oddball hero. And it's quite raunchy.
Definitely, the raunchiest of Rajamouli's movies.
At first, I was actually watching a version that has been heavily censored. There were several moments in which the audio was just muted and whole segments were completely cut. Thankfully, there's also an uncut version that you can find on YouTube.
The Rajamouli madness starts immediately with this movie. Slow motion, close-up shots, Mickey Mousing, screaming, crazy looks, sounds, music, and the first song, College Papala, is sensational right away.
It is, and like with all of Rajamouli's movies, the energy level is just so high all the time. Not only during the songs, which are all pretty neat, although some of them really only function as fillers, but also outside of them. The pace is relentless at times.
Absolutely. Everything's so imaginative and creative and just fun, and before you finish processing one scene, the next is already coming at you with full speed.
One of Rajamouli's most important and biggest strengths is the creation of larger-than-life characters or simply immensely memorable ones. Bahubali, Balaladeva, Devasena, Raja,
Kala Bhairava, Nani and Sudeep, Bindu, even Sunil's Ramu.
Yes, and Vikramarkudu is no different. By using yet another one of his typical narrative techniques, the trope of the mistaken identity, Rajamouli creates two characters, Attili and Vikram, and more or less makes them into one character. And Rajiteva is pretty awesome in both roles.
Yes, and he's a great dancer too, but sadly he's not in RRR, so there won't be a dancing competition between him, NTR Jr. and Ramcharan.
But he's in good company in this movie, because Anushka Shetty, who apparently had a breakthrough with this role, is pretty great too. She's fierce, strong, sexy, funny, but she's also very sweet and innocent. She sadly disappears for quite some time though, because also typical for Rajamouli and so many other big masala movies, we get a flashback.
We reach a point where Vikram's colleagues owe Attili and Neha an explanation. It actually happens right after the first big action sequence, which I really liked. Before that, it's really only banter between Attili and Neha and Attili and his friend Abulu, played by Brahmanandam, who shares the same fate as Anushka Shetty because his character also vanishes from the screen for quite some time.
The whole flashback dragged a little bit for me, and it's a common problem. I think it's just a little bit problematic to just leave the characters that we were introduced to and liked for such a long duration. That's actually something that also applies to the Bahubali movies.
Normally I would agree, but strangely enough, it didn't bother me in Vikramarkudu. I thought the whole flashback sequence was completely awesome, all the ass kicking by Vikram Rathod. The whole movie doesn't take itself very seriously, even less serious than the other Rajamouli movies that are completely out of this world.
Maybe, but for me it's not just a flashback. The whole movie could have been trimmed down for sure. Of course, I know that commercial Indian cinema, and Telugu cinema in particular, demand these long runtimes, but still, it reaches a point, probably several, where things don't feel that organic anymore, like they just aren't coming to an end.
I can agree with that, especially the final act that starts right after the flashback is rather flimsy and the story almost comes to a halt. We're really treading water with songs and more banter until things get going again with the character Titla, who's introduced quite epically at the beginning, but really should have been more in this movie because he's actually pretty cool and Ajay gives a menacing performance.
Absolutely, you have to see past the movie's limited budget, but I like this strange, post-apocalyptic pirate vibe of Titla's lair and their clothes and weapons. But it seems completely random, because we don't get an explanation for anything regarding Titla. He's just a mystical brother of Bavuji who lives in the mountains for some reason.
Yeah, I like this mystical dimension, but I totally agree. There's no exposition or anything for him. And it feels like a missed chance because I'm totally into this post-apocalyptic stuff. But as I said before, the action is pretty cool in this movie, and so is the final confrontation between Titla, Atili, Niha and Bavuchi, who regretfully has become more of a parody at that point. He's actually quite a sinister villain at the beginning.
Yes, and his cousin, the guy who always babbles stuff into the camera all of a sudden, is so annoying. Rajamouli definitely likes to overdo it at times, but the action is a lot of fun.
It feels very raw, and the setting adds to that. It's tense and filled with epic superhuman scenes that of course also radiate this certain coolness that you want from a hero like Vikram or Atili. I mean, whoever says, "Shave my mustache and bury me, you scoundrels," at least that's what the subtitle said, is like the coolest guy ever.
And it's nice that the brute weapon with the razor-sharp cogwheel is put to use numerous times, just like this strange clapping thing that Atili and Niha do.
Jinta ta chita chita jinta ta ta.
I think of all the Rajamouli movies that we have seen so far, this is my least favorite, but that doesn't really mean much because I still thoroughly enjoyed it.
I really liked it. It becomes weaker after the flashback and there's some stuff in there in general that I didn't care about much. But all in all, it's another winner for me.
So, what would we say in German about Vikramarkudu?
Vikramarkudu ist ein großer Spaß, der mit sämtlichen Markenzeichen von SS Rajamouli, den guten und auch den nicht so guten versehen ist. Wer Unterhaltung in seiner reinsten Masala-Form sucht, liegt mit diesem Film auf jeden Fall richtig.
I give Vikramarkudu 7 out of 10. It's more like 7.3, but I don't do that.
For me, it's 8 out of 10. It's more like 8.1, but I don't do that either. Did you know that Ravi Teja worked as an assistant director for both television and film in Hindi and Telugu cinema?
Pretty lame trivia, buddy. So, what are your thoughts about the movie? Leave a comment. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at the Jimmy Cage.
And you can hit me up on Twitter at the Buddymeister.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all we have to tell.